as cue cards will travel. This isn't actually a cue card. This is the card that was sent to me by religious fanatics when they saw that the initiative was starting to look into hooking up with the atheist community. They decided that my soul was in danger and they needed to send me information on how, if I don't convert to Christianity immediately, then I'm going to be in big trouble with Jesus at the end of time. Jesus is going to bust my ass and toss me in the eternal fire. But I did consider using cue cards after the last video turned out to be a total disaster because I kind of plotted an outline for it and I wanted for it to be perfect. And so of course I screwed it up. My delivery was all botched. I mean, I finished the video, I got what I needed to across, but I'm guessing that you guys think it was a debacle, and I apologize for that. You know, I hadn't really gotten any rest. I had been up and at 'em, working on practicing driving for my license exam, which was particularly cool. Meeting with family, drinking, partying, night swimming with voluptuous bikini girls, and getting viciously assaulted by a malicious kitten for days, for at least 3 days, I think. Maybe it seemed a lot longer, of course, to me, but as I said, I hadn't really gotten any rest, and so that's why that video sucked, although I think I did fairly well, at least for my condition. In any case, this course is not simply, fun and games, investigate, and become, get people acquainted with ideas and concepts regarding religion and spirituality that perhaps they are not, familiar with yet, and, kind of bring everybody up to speed on a universal consideration of what some of these things are, what they mean, what their intentions are. But it's intended to be kind of like an operation, a surgical procedure, if you will. If you consider the overall, if you take into consideration that first person perspective and you look at things from through this lens of a spectacle of a concept where there is one overall consciousness, one cosmic entity that shares a mind and understanding, one oversoul, the God figure existing, then we have to consider that a body. I'm going to have to make it clear right now that throughout my course and throughout the entirety of my understanding, everything that I speak to is of a physical nature. Everything is physical. There is nothing outside of physics. I mean, there's something, evidently, there's something outside of physics, but we cannot, it's impossible to even approach an investigation of that something, which is what we're going to try to do here, essentially. But we have to cut through all the bullshit that's wrapping it up, all its masking first before we can try that, which we'll get to eventually. We're gonna go beyond the boundary. We're gonna go where no man has gone before us, so to speak. But throughout the course and throughout our understanding, throughout principle dynamics, throughout everything that I speak to, everything is physical. Everything is a form. Anything that has a body, a substance, a material, anything that has a consolidated form is physical. And physics is the underlying application for how it comes into play. When we speak to abstract ideas, which, it's in our common understanding. If you look up the definition of the word body, which anything that exists, anything that has a physical form is a body, and if you look into the very definition of the word body, it will tell you that it is an abstract form brought into being, or it is that which gives form to an abstract idea. It's written right there. We understand this. A lot of us either forgot it or just never even paid attention to it, but there is the actual meaning of the word body is a mental construction brought into a physical form. And everything that exists is physical. Thoughts have form. We don't have utensils with which to measure them yet, but I mean we do have some measures by which to document them, so to speak. We can what's the word? We can examine them, with certain medical equipment, EKGs and such, or magnetic resonance imaging, active MRIs. We can examine thoughts, really, or at least the patterns that light up in the brain, the neurons that fire. We can look into that. We are capable of determining that ideas, thoughts, intentions, even feelings, emotions have a form, have a substance. They exist as a physical, material property in nature. Everything is physical, and we're going to apply physics to everything that we consider. But as I was saying, considering that there is one ultimate body, one entity that we're all a part of, one living organism, it is created. It's the purity of its creation, and the bottom line of its existence is going to be psychic or mental. It's going to be a thought form. It's going to be a construct of concepts and ideas that make it happen. This, as we explored in the last video, how it could possibly have come into being through the utilization of logic, or the following a logical, rational thought pattern, it would come into being and it reflect upon itself to create physics in the first place. And that's an idea. Again, this is theory, it's logic, but that's the general idea that I have of it. And so that's what we're going to work at. Whatever the case may be, whether you buy that or not, whether you like that or not, the ultimate understanding there that we need to keep in mind is that there is one entity and that it's communicating with itself. Now, this one entity, being psychological in nature, being created of concepts, thought forms, its base, its soul, as it were, or its mind, is kind of infested, really, with kind of cancerous tumors, and they are concrete, or not concrete, as I said, but relative artifacts, prime values that are attached to these catalyst events that we've spoken of. And the catalyst events are kind of like the chakras of the psychological system of humanity, or of the earth itself. And each catalyst event has blockages in it, just as the human body chakra system can have blockages in it. And if anybody's taken aback by me speaking to chakras, please look into what chakras actually are before you naysay the concept of them. Chakras are not some abstract, crazy idea, which we've just ascertained that everything is an abstract idea, really. But chakras are not some kind of crazy metaphysical hoopla. Chakras are the actual physical nerve centers in the body, the nerve clusters that attach to major systems in the body. So they are actual documented realities. These chakras, or as I like to term them, engines, are the centers of activity in the nervous system, and they're the primary tuning points for the brain's workings, for the workings of the human brain. And psychology is what manipulates these chakras. Your psychology, your psychic understanding, your mental understanding is what causes for these chakras to operate in certain ways. If you have traumas in your past, or you have rock solid belief systems, or just anything that you hold in high regard, or anything that's affecting you on a psychological level, is what's going to block up these chakras. And that's what we speak to when we're talking about Kundalini, but that's a different course. This course, we're speaking to the chakras of the overall psychology of humanity itself, the larger, the macrocosm. And we're going to essentially attack the artifacts, the clusters that are blocking up, the clusters of aspects and artifacts, remnants that are blocking up these major chakras, these catalyst events, in an attempt to surgically remove the cancers, the tumors from society that are causing for us to be held back, that are causing for us to stagnate, that are even causing for us to devolve. I mean, we damage ourselves every day through these. And as I stated in the first video, witnessing the damage that it had done to the community, insofar as the atheist community is regarded, where, they dismiss spirituality altogether because of these certain artifacts that are blocking their system, not allowing for them to progress in a certain way. We're going to try and get them through. We're going to try and get everybody through these together. We're going to clear them up as best we can. We're going to remove those blockages, and we are going to, essentially save the world. We're going to repair humanity. But working from the root, from the bottom line level, from the psychology up, where everything emanates from our where everything emanates from our understanding, from our concepts and our conceptual constructions, our psychology, we're going to, affect a change there that will emanate throughout the system. Now, in order to do this, we're going to have to use very precise tools. And these tools, not unlike a psychic scalpel, you could say, are going to be words. In case you don't know me well enough, I'll tell you here, I am a bit of a rhetoric fanatic. I love words. I'm a writer. I write, sci-fi mysteries. Of course, I write thesis. I've written a thesis, and I write theories and such. I write a lot. I love to write. It's what I've always done. I've done it since I was a little tiny kid. And so I'm a bit of a word fanatic. I'm a rhetoric fanatic. And I especially love titles and names. Now, we spoke to reflection, which reflection people understand as being like a reflection in a mirror, and some people understand as being reflective, like reflecting upon your own qualities or your own concepts, reflecting upon yourself, not in an image way, but in a construct way. We need for reflection itself to be identified as the key, the primary fundamental principle dynamic, which the first cause, the first principle dynamic. Which, of course, principle dynamics course, I'll bet you thought that was meaning to say the dynamics of certain principles, but it's also mainly speaking to the principle dynamics, the actual principle dynamics. It's both really, but it's a tricky title, and you're going to find that I really love to do that. I love to use tricky titles that have dual meanings. That's an example of such principle dynamics. But throughout principle dynamics especially, and it's going to resonate with this course, of course, and we're going to use it in this course, there's a vast assortment of terminology that we've designed specifically for this. These are the psychic scalpels, the tools we need to remove the cancers and to work with the psychology of humanity as a whole. Reflection, we need reflection to be understood as the key principle dynamic, the core value beneath everything. Reflection. And coming out from reflection, of course, we've identified memory, gravity, and relativity, which correspond with, on a microcosmic level, correspond with your tools that you use to create personally, which are your thought, your word, and your deed, or your attitude generally, your outlook, your language, your outlook, your language, and your impression, your emotions, the way you feel about things. So the words that you use, the way you define things, the things that you imply, everything is implication. That initial first cause is implication. That which is cannot exist without that which is not, and therefore there is 1 second. That's how time is created. That's a bottom core aspect of how time is created, the key element being reflection. We need to keep that in mind throughout all of this, because this investigation is utilizing that first person principle, that spectacle of reflection, that everything is being reflected from a first person perspective, that it is the world speaking to itself. That's how we're going to investigate things, and that's how we're going to come to a common understanding of them. And it eliminates all biases. This spectacle eliminates all biases. It eliminates all subjectivity, really, at least to the best of our ability. It gets rid of subjectivity insofar as we are capable of doing from our human understanding. It brings us all down to a bottom line, base level, single entity reflecting upon itself in the world right here, right now. Beyond that, terminologies that can be used will regard what we call fixations, And fixations can be investments or they can be traps. Fixations are where your attention falls into certain realms or certain items of inquiry, certain objects of interest. That's such as that would be regarding the catalyst events would be major fixations. That's where the entire world, all of society, has a fixation on these particular understandings, these items of inquiry. And then, there are smaller fixations that come out. You might have a fixation on apples. You might love apples. You might actually even think of other things as relating to apples somehow. It could be something as small as that or as simple as that, but it could have wide-reaching consequences in so far as your understanding is concerned. Your mentality could be entirely affected in every moment by the apple. So that would be a fixation. But fixations can be also romantic relationships. They can be addictive processes, habits. They can be, you might like video games, or you might like atheism. You might like religion. Whatever is a fixation is an object of interest that your attention falls into, and that affects other items of inquiry around it. So fixation can be an investment. It can be a solid investment. Like my relationship to my ex was a solid investment because we both grew a great deal. I taught her a lot. She taught me a lot. We learned from each other. We learned, how to love in general. We were so loving and we had such a great relationship. And, ultimately it fell apart because of certain aspects that came into play that were unavoidable, really things that needed to be done for a certain reason. And we both wound up, maybe not where we wanted to be at the time. We really did want to be together, whatever the case may be, but that would have not been the best choice. But the relationship itself, the fixation on our relationship to each other is what pays off ultimately, because we are still the closest of friends and we still grow and learn from each other, and that relationship between us is a fixation. And of course, fixations ultimately are going to be relationships to different things are all that really exists. That's the only thing that actually matters, is relations. Nothing, everything else is just an explanation created to define a reason, to explain a reason. The reason exists first, then there is an explanation created around it, and we witness it as happening in reverse. We'll get to that. We'll put examples of that down, and we'll get into explaining exactly what that is and how it works and what that means. But that would be another example of the terminologies in play. Of course, values and aspects. Values are referring to not fixations. Fixations are going to be a combination of values that come into play to create a relationship, a relativity of values. But values essentially are going to be like the understanding of what love is, would be the key example. And we have to regard love as being investment. Love is not purely good. Love is not, being caring and loving for somebody, but love is respect, rather. Love is having an investment in something, being, invested in something, having a vested interest in the consideration of a thing is what love is. Love is ultimately it's the backing to everything. Everything that exists only exists because we've invested our being into it. And like I said, some investments pay off, some investments are traps that can be like time sinks. And in this day and age, we see that all over the place, where people even go out of their way to design time sinks using various combinations of values specifically designed to drag your attention and to waste it, to waste your time. They're speed traps. We're going to want to try and avoid those. Anybody that's into this, anybody that's following along here, you're going to want to try and avoid speed traps. Try to keep active in investments. Try to find things that are worth investing in. And of course, this would be determined by that first person perspective. Is it something that affects you in the long term? Is it something that helps you to grow as a person? Is it something that Yeah, anything that you build up, like if you play a video game and you collect things, eventually that video game's going to end, or you're going to get tired of it. It's going to be something you're going to toss away, and the same can be applied even to your life. So, I mean, if you have a job that you're working, that you're invested in, you have to determine whether or not that's actually lasting. And when I say lasting, I mean, is it providing you with values, training you to be a better person ultimately underneath things? Is it going to help you with other things that you come across? Can it be applied to the other aspects of your life? So, as that's an idea as to what fixations, investments, and speed traps are. But value is meaning. Value is meaning. Value is the core meaning behind something. Like the fruit is food. That's a value. That's the value that constructs this thing, and then there are other aspects that attach to it to create, the beauty of the apple and the alluring factor of it, the sweetness of its flavor, everything that comes into play around simple. This is a fuel source. Value. And aspects are usually, a lot of aspects are designed. They're part of the design. Just the apple has beauty to attract you. The apple has flavor to make you like to eat it. It's designed to be impressive upon you in a positive way. But and then that's going to be speaking to intelligent design, how intelligent design is in fact existing. But other aspects can be attached to it, such as a lot of people think that the apple is the fruit from the tree in Eden. And so some people have negative views on the apple in general, like it's just an apple. It really, in reality, the value is it's just a good fuel source. It's a sugar. But people attach aspects to it. Some people might even have negative, opinions of the apple itself because of this story from Eden. And that's the kind of things we're going to be investigating. What things really mean, what things really are, and what aspects people have attached to it, the human rationality, the human perspective, that filter of what aspects and implications have been attached to things. And again, experience is made of implication. Implications cause for your understanding to develop. What is implied by a thing or an action is, it that leaks out, and that can cause enterprises to occur outside of it, be they positive or negative. You know, you have fixations that are made of values that emanate aspects that create your reality, essentially. And we're going to investigate how reality is created in this way. We're going to see some of the more, I suppose you could say, realistic aspects or values. We're going to look into the actual baseline reality of things, is basically what I'm trying to get at. We're going to try and remove the negative aspects and the filters that we placed upon them. And so, filters, obviously filters means what filters means. Value is a concrete meaning, or at least a relative meaning of a thing. Aspects are what implications have been attached to it. Investments, speed traps, fixations. We've spoken of these. There's going to be a lot of terms that we use that maybe a lot of people are unfamiliar with, but it's necessary because we have to make it as basic and as simple as possible. So that is speaking to our investment here in creating a common terminology that makes things simpler and easier to work with, our surgical tools for this overall procedure. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys like it so far. Please give me some kind of feedback or comments. Nobody ever gives me feedback, and I think that's kind of selfish. I mean, I'm busting my ass to make shit for you guys. The least you could say is I don't like it. But I hope you do like it. I'm very glad that you watched it. Sorry this one was a little longer than most, but we'll clean it up in the future. Kila Salai, Terry Uni, Siari Namaste.